What's going on, everybody? Welcome to the Behind the Glass podcast. Thanks for joining us here on YouTube and anywhere you can find your podcast: Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, Anchor, Breaker, and Radio Public. You can follow us on Twitter at Brandon_Stoll for Brandon, at Stephen Priest Jr. for myself. Huge shout out to everybody that listened to the first episode. We really appreciate your support. Whether you listen through YouTube, whether you listen through any other podcast service, we really greatly appreciate your listenership. And thanks for rocking with us each and every day as we try and get these going every Monday and every Friday. And just real quick, for those who've listened and those who will listen, if you want to support the podcast, you can do it, and we would greatly appreciate it. It'll help us better this experience for you. If you want to support, all you have to do is go to anchor.fm/behindtheglasssports. Again, anchor.fm/behindtheglasssports. And you'll go to our podcast page, and you'll see as you scroll down just a little bit, there's a support button. And you can click on that and donate however much you want. Any amount would be greatly appreciated. And we're good to go. Brandon Sniffles, how you doing this morning, man?
Well, you made me, wake up an hour early, so I'm dying over here. Just to let you know. Just want to make sure you know that this is very tough for me.
Yeah,
waking
no,
up at
I understand the struggle. That's kind of how I was this morning when I woke up as well.
Yeah, well, I have a puppy that I have to take care of as well. So I'm he was very confused. He's like, because he wakes up at the same time every day. He goes to bed at the same time and he wakes up at the same time. He has this little schedule. And so I woke him up an hour early, and he looked at me like, "What are you doing?"
Right.
It's not time yet.
So yeah, we did move up the podcast just a little bit this morning because I get the nice experience of going back into work. I've been in self-quarantine for the past 2 weeks, not because I was sick or anything. We had a little scare with my mom. Thankfully, she's doing great. We believe she didn't have the virus at all, just allergies or possibly cold symptoms, but either way, everything's good to go. So I get to go back into work today. So pretty excited about that. That's why we're moving things up just a little bit for you guys. Hopefully that's not a huge issue, but we're going to get things kicked off today's podcast with The Last Dance. Hopefully some of you have been keeping up with that or watching it. Huge reaction from last night's episode as I was going through Twitter. Brandon, what did you make of last night's episodes that really focused on Michael's retirement the first time around, going to baseball and then coming back, and then just kind of that last year? Also, the second episode was really that last year as they continued to grind through that final championship run.
Yeah, the first episode I really enjoy. Going through, I knew what had happened. Did you ever watch? There's a movie that obviously he didn't. I don't know if he gave like the go ahead for the movie. It was just more of like it kind of just showed what kind of happened throughout. Like, I guess I started with him in college or as a kid probably, and it went up to probably the end of like that 93 season and maybe a little bit through baseball. But it was, I forget what it was called, but it's a Michael Jordan movie, and there's whoever was in it. I don't think it was like any big actors or anything at the time, but they actually talk about and show like what happened with his dad, and that's pretty much the reason why he retired at that point.
Yeah.
At least that's how that movie said, why he retired, and it kind of showed all that. So I kind of knew like that was at least part of the reason why he had retired. So it was all, it wasn't really new to me. But it was really interesting to kind of see, the other things, because there was a lot of, at that time, he was probably the most famous person on the planet. And that was a lot, all of the gambling issues and media pretty much going at him. And it was just, he needed a break. He really did. I mean, it's not like today where you can just turn off your phone and ignore it, right? It was for him, it was just constantly, he couldn't go outside. And like one of the episodes last weekend, right? It showed him like just in the hotel,
Yeah.
and he couldn't leave the hotel. I mean, it was like that for him, and he really, I mean, he needed a break, and he wanted to go do something else because he had done everything in the NBA. I mean, what else was there for him to do other than win a third championship, because Magic and Bird hadn't done that, and he had the Olympics. So you
Right.
had to keep playing. And once that happened, and then his dad tragically passed away, and all of that had happened, and the addition of the gambling issues and the media going after him, it was just there was no reason for him to go and play again.
Yeah, and watching all that go down, I mean, I knew his dad was murdered. I didn't know how. I mean, just to hear
Yeah.
how it went down. I mean, he pulls off to take a nap and two 18-year-old kids, essentially rob him and kill him. It's just like, man, I mean, come on. So I mean, I can't imagine what that was like for him and his family. But yeah, I think like you said, it was just a combination of just many things all at once hitting him. I mean, he had so much success midway through his career. Early on, it was a bit of a struggle. I mean, he was obviously great and ascending in the NBA. He wasn't reaching those championship levels of status yet, winning those. And then he does that. He gets that third one, and then you all on top of that throw in the '92 Olympics. And I forgot who they were interviewing in the first episode last night, and he told Michael told this person, I'm going to
Hmm.
shock the world. I would retire after this championship run, but one, no one's ever three-peated, so I could do that again. And we also have the '92 Olympics, so I got to do that. So I'll do it next year. And just seeing that he had that already in his mind before everything went down with his dad. I think the what happened with his dad was just kind of the cherry on top of things, so to
Right.
speak, that really just pushed things over the top. His dad was one of his biggest supporters, if not his biggest supporter. In his first championship, there's that iconic photo of him with the trophy, and his dad is right over his shoulder with him. So I can imagine that was extremely rough on him. And so that was kind of what pushed things over and allowed him to transition to a sport where his dad wanted him to originally try and go pro and make a living in through that route. And I think it was a good reprieve for him, a good way to get his mind off of things and just kind of step away from everything basketball related that he was so connected to.
Right. Yeah, and and I mean, I was thinking last night, what if Jordan was in this era with as far as social media and
Right.
all of that? I guess, is today's media a little bit, I guess, easier and a little bit lighter than back then, just for the fact that everything's online, so it's easier to block out.
I would say it's the exact opposite. I would say today, handling the media of today, because there's so much, everybody has a phone, everybody can record you at any moment or take a picture. It's like 24 surveillance, really, anywhere you go. At least back then, I mean, you could, stay locked away in a hotel
Hmm.
and no one's gonna see you walking down the hallway or be able to see you and then be able to post a picture. Oh, Michael Jordan's in this hotel, and then stand outside your room, so to speak. I think today's pressures on these athletes, especially young athletes coming up like a Zion Williamson, and you have all this pressure of social media and everything that can come along with that. I would say it'd be more rough today, but if Jordan was in this era, I don't think he would give a damn. I think he would be completely dark on social media, to be quite honest with you. I don't think he would have anything to do with it because, much like we saw with Kobe Bryant, it's just that mentality of all I want to do is win. I don't care about the other stuff.
Well, then would the same thing have happened? Would he have been worn out?
That's a great question.
Because we saw LeBron go to 8 straight, and by that 7th and 8th season with Cleveland, once Kyrie was gone, especially, you saw a guy who was just done. He needed to, and partly probably why he was okay with going to that LA team, who wasn't very good at that time. It was
Which,
it was it was a chance for him to take a break.
side note, I mean, I know this is about Michael right now, but that should make people really appreciate that much more what LeBron did.
Yeah.
Even though he lost and even though he didn't, win as many as Michael did, for this man to go to, what was it, 9 straight
He went to
NBA
8.
finals,
He's gone to
8
9. He went
straight,
to 8 straight. Yeah.
winning 3, losing 5 obviously, playing arguably one of the greatest team, the 2 of the greatest
Yeah.
teams
I
in
was just gonna
NBA
tell
history.
you. Right.
With the Spurs dynasty
Yeah.
and then, the Warriors dynasty, and then throw in what, at least 2 Olympics in there
Yeah.
as well. I mean, yes, I know he didn't have a schlub of a team to pull himself. He had talent on both teams that he did it with, except for that first Cleveland team.
Hmm.
But man, you just think about, Jordan was worn out just after 3 straight and an Olympics appearance. Double that and add 2 more and 2 Olympics, and LeBron is doing that. That's incredible to me.
Well, and that's why I ask, because showing that through that documentary, I mean, it just felt like I think at that time, today, I think today's world is a bit easier in a way, because social media is very the social media's memory is very short, right? You don't Something happens and it's gone in 2 days, not even, because something else happens. And so I feel
You
like,
think so? I
yeah, I mean, I
disagree.
think I think some things can just be forgotten so easily, and or at least it can be brushed off so easily, right? Like, the whole KD on Twitter thing. I mean, yeah, people joke about it now, but that was gone in
Right.
what, a week?
I mean, I guess the essence of it, the kind of overall, like, hype of it and everything like that, I guess that dies down, sure. But I mean, it still stays relevant. I mean,
Right,
people
but
are still gonna think of KD as the guy. Well, that when you think Kevin Durant, you're not gonna think of, oh, the guy that had burners. It's just gonna be, oh, Kevin Durant, amazing scorer, Hall of Famer, champion, and oh, that one time he had like 18 burner accounts and was fighting with 13-year-old kids on Twitter for whatever reason.
right, but what I'm saying though is, at that time Jordan was at the very top, at the peak in the world, right?
Yeah.
He was the most famous person in the world,
Right.
and there was no one even close to him. But fast forward in today's world, or when, say when LeBron was in his prime and winning championships, he was at the top, but there was others with him, because in today's world, because of social media as well, and just the internet and whatever, there's other famous people. There's Tom Brady, right? There's other famous athletes, not just, not to mention whatever, movie stars, music, whatever that's out there. Because there's the internet, it's so easy to be able to follow so many other celebrities.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas I just feel like back then it wasn't as easy, and if all the attention was on one guy, no one else was going to be close to that one guy.
Yeah, I think if Michael was around in this time, he would probably be. It's crazy to imagine, maybe even bigger because of social media, and you would have had eyes on him. And now, granted, he was cut in high school, but going to UNC and having the success he did. I mean,
Hmm.
we're obviously assuming that everything that happened in his life
Well, and,
already
and
will
that's the
happen
thing, because there's
again.
more competition now.
Right.
So it's
But if everything, if at the bare minimum his talent translates over, which obviously it would, because it's
right.
in all reality, to be fair, it's a softer NBA. There's
Yes,
less
but there's more talent. I think that
yes, there's
balances out.
definitely more skill for sure. But offensively, he would completely still dominate, I believe, easily. Defensively, it'd be interesting to see how he would have to adjust to that style of play, because
Hmm.
obviously he's coming from a more physical NBA where you can hand check and body guys a little bit more. But I think it would translate, and I think his fame would even somehow grow even more with social media. One thing I found interesting last night, was when he retired the first time and he goes to baseball and he has that 13 game hitting streak, and then
Yeah.
the pitchers catch on in the minors and they start throwing him breaking balls, and they say, okay, now Michael goes into a slump, and then that's when the Sports Illustrated cover comes out, and bag it Michael, go home type of thing, whatever it was. And then one of the coaches, was it Terry Francona, I believe it was. They were saying that his work ethic still translated over. It was one of the greatest work ethics that they've ever
Hmm.
seen, because he would go before practice and practice hitting those breaking balls on the breaking ball machine. He would play the game, and then he would hit after the game to try and practice. And they said that he hit 200 in the minors, and people were like, "That's incredible!" And then he drives in 50 runs in that season, and there were guys in the minors who were prospects, and they didn't even drive in 50 runs. And a lot of what I found interesting out of all of that, to sum it up, was that some of these coaches, they were like, you know what, if he would have kept with it, he could have made the majors.
Yeah.
They weren't saying, oh, he would have been a Hall of Famer, who wouldn't have been a great player, but he would have made the majors, which is crazy to me.
Yeah, he probably, if he would have kept at it, you got to remember too, he's 31 at this time.
He's
So
31, and they said, I believe it was, he stopped playing baseball. It
at
was either
17.
14 or 17, something like
17.
that. But there was a huge gap of when the last
Right.
time he played, and not only the last time he played, but that he didn't play professionally. He was playing like high school or whatever,
Right.
grade school baseball.
Yeah, and that's, I mean, it would have taken him probably, because at that point it had been what? I mean, that first season, obviously, and then they went into a strike, right? So he only played
Yes.
technically one season.
I believe so. Yeah.
So one season, he hits 200, drives in 50 runs. I would say he'd probably spend one more year in AA or AAA, and then that third year, he probably would have been called up maybe in September.
Yeah.
When the rosters are expanded, and then at that point he probably would have made it. But then he'd be at the bench, at the end of the bench type of thing. So I mean, he would have made it. I just, like you said, he wouldn't be a Hall of Famer. I don't think he'd be a starter, but
Right.
he would have made it.
Yeah. And it's just impressive. And obviously, we've seen dual sport athletes before with guys like Deion Sanders and
Mhm.
Bo Jackson, and what they were able to do. But just to think that this guy at age 31 was able to, transition over and at least to some degree have success. And people were kind of projecting, hey, if you keep with it, you could possibly make it to the majors, was just crazy. Another
Right.
thing that stood out to me last night from the episode, I believe it was the second episode, which was focusing more on that final championship run, with Jordan and those Bulls teams, was just the way he handled himself in practice with his teammates,
Mhm.
and how he carried that, and how he went about motivating guys. What did you think of how he played with his teammates? A lot of guys said, yeah, he was a jerk. He wasn't fun to be around, but at the end of the day, it worked. What did you think about how he went about playing with his teammates, and how he how he led guys, I should say?
Yeah, I mean, it nothing like that bothers me. I know it probably bothered some people, but I mean, in order, and I like what they said, where being a leader has a price, winning championships has a price, right?
For sure.
And I think if you if you could ask Kobe, and if you ask LeBron, and any of those guys, KD, at this point, there, there's a price that they had to pay to win. Whether it was dealing with media in such a way, whether it was having teammates that didn't like you. I mean, Kyrie literally left LeBron after winning a championship and then losing one, but making it to 3 straight, and he
Yep.
left because he wanted to be the guy. And I mean, it's just there's a price that you have to pay if you want to win, and if you want those things. And I mean, there's been talks too about, like, Kobe wasn't the best teammate at times. LeBron sometimes isn't the best teammate. And there's some players that just can't handle playing with those guys. I mean, they play a different game. Those guys, they don't play basketball at a certain point. They're playing a completely different game because they learn how to win, and they learn what it takes to win at the highest level. And 99% of the league doesn't know that. And so when you're practicing with them, and when you're playing with them, and and you're on the court with them, it's different, and you have to adjust to that, and you have to show them that you are at least willing to try to get to their level. And if you don't, you're going to have a hard time playing with those guys. And you're going to have that perception that this guy is a terrible teammate. And it's because you're not willing to get up to that level. And that's just how it is with those guys. And we will see that until the end of the end of the league. I mean, same with Tom Brady, Peyton Manning. There's a certain level with those guys that those guys hit that sometimes it's very difficult to be one of their teammates.
Yeah, and to me, I love that. Now, obviously, would I love it if I was Steve Kerr and I'm getting punched in the eye, or the constant hounding? In the moment, you don't love that. No, it's that tough love mentality. But Jordan was explaining, if these guys can't get to my level, then I don't want to play with you, because I know they should know whatever they're doing and I'm putting them through, I'm putting myself through already, so we can be prepared,
Right.
because we can't beat the Knicks or the Pacers. If they can't handle me, then they can't handle these guys. But if they can handle me, then we can handle these guys. And you saw that from, they cut to BJ Armstrong when he's playing for the Hornets, and he has that one night against Michael, and he goes off and he credits Michael. He said, that really taught me in that moment. I knew how to win. I knew what to do in that moment. Now he made the ultimate mistake, which I think is just hilarious, because in every episode, there's been an example of somebody that does something, at least most of the time, or Jordan makes it up, but somebody, who talks crap or does something. Last night they were showing BJ Armstrong. He hits that shot, and then he's talking crap to Michael, and he's talking crap to the bench. And then the next night, what does Michael do? He completely obliterates BJ Armstrong and goes off. I loved the other one. What was the guy's name? I'm spacing his name.
Yeah, I
That
have
played
no
for was it the Pistons or something like that, or some other team, or it was the Bullets, I believe it was.
Yeah.
Bradford or something like that. And the guy drops 37 in the game, and Jordan struggles that night. And Jordan makes up the story that this guy says, "Good game, Mike." And that's what motivates Jordan. It never even happened. But then he tells his teammates, "I'm going to have in a half what that kid had in the entire game last night." And he goes out and scores 36 in the first half. I'm just like, oh my God, how does this guy do this? Or the Orlando Magic series, 45 isn't 23. And what does Michael do the next game against Orlando? Changes to 23 and drops, I believe, 55 on them. I was like, oh my God, dude, this is the stuff of just legends right here. You can't make this up. And I just love that. I love seeing that. I never knew any of these things.
Yeah, I didn't know those two things. I didn't know, especially the jersey one. I thought he had come back the next season and changed his jersey back to 23.
Yeah.
But yeah,
he did.
Right. But he got fined $100,000 for changing his jersey in the middle of the playoffs, or his jersey number. So yeah, that's something that you'll never. I mean, LeBron tried to change his number to number 6 before the season started, and he couldn't.
Right.
Like, it's just kind of ridiculous that he was, I don't know if there was if there's stricter rules now because of that, or whatever. I don't know. I mean, obviously there's jersey sales and all that stuff that, people are worried about now, but I think it was just easier to do that type of stuff back then. But it's funny how, I mean, these things only he could do. And
it's like, why are guys doing this? It's like when Tom was with the Patriots, and you teams going in the playoffs are saying something about the Patriots, and you're like, why are you doing this? You're just waking the sleeping giant. And that's what teams do. And probably my favorite example of this with this Last Dance series was early in the series when Michael's playing the Celtics early in his career in the playoffs, and they lose game 1, but he has an amazing game, and he goes to golf with Danny Ainge.
Yeah.
And as they're leaving, he tells Danny Ainge, "Tell your boy Dennis Johnson I have something for him tomorrow." And he goes out and drops like 50 or 60 that night. I'm just like, oh my God, dude, how does this guy do this?
I think
like,
that was a
so
record
nuts.
game, right? The 63.
Yeah. It's just nuts that he can just hone in like that and just have the ability to just deliver. And people said it last night, and you're seeing this. He was just on so much of a different level that it wasn't. And you mentioned this a little bit ago. It wasn't him just playing basketball. He was at such a high level that he had to find ways to make a game within a game so he could motivate himself
Yeah, he
to
got
get
bored.
everything out.
Like he was so much better than everyone. That could you imagine doing something every day that no one can really compete with you,
Right.
and you're you could beat anyone in the game that's playing, like just half asleep,
Yeah.
and you're gonna get bored. I mean, it's I mean that I mean that's why a lot of times I think in today's NBA, especially with the guy like LeBron who went to 8 straight NBA finals, I mean, it's probably the same thing. He had to find other motivations to keep playing and to keep getting there. And that's, I mean, I'm sure, in 10, 20 years, whatever, we'll probably hear some stories very similar to where he had to find other motivation.
Right.
And there was times against, when he was in Cleveland where he's where they had no business getting to the NBA Finals, especially that last year when after Kyrie left, right? They had no
Mhm.
business going to the NBA Finals. They really shouldn't have been there, and they they what were they down like 2-0 to Indiana at one point? I'm pretty sure, or was that
Yeah.
Chicago? I mean, they were,
They were
and
down 2-1 in 2015 to Chicago because Derrick Rose hit that
right,
backboard buzzer beater.
right, and so it's like it's almost like and it's one of those things like LeBron's never really had the number one seed. And it's almost like he doesn't want the number one seed so he could have a challenge. It's those type of things where he doesn't care about the regular season in that way because he knows that and when it comes playoff time, it's different. And actually Jordan said something like that in the documentary last night. The regular season is the regular season.
Yep.
But the playoffs, that's the highest level. That's the only thing that matters.
Mhm.
You can do whatever you want in the regular season. When it comes to the playoffs, everything's reset. It's 0
Right.
0, and it's completely different. And so guys like him and LeBron and Kobe, they all knew that. And for LeBron, the number one seed, I don't think they got the number one seed even like half the time between those eight straight NBA finals. I mean, I don't think they were the number one seed maybe 5 times that they were.
Yeah, I would say most of the time they were probably the
But
number
but
1
towards
seed.
the but
There was
towards the
probably a couple
end,
times.
but towards
Yeah.
the end it really didn't matter. I mean, that last year they were the 4 seed. So it's like or the 4 or 5 seed. They were one of those. And it's like, well, cuz they in the second round they had played Toronto and I think they swept Toronto, who was the number 1 seed. So it's just that shows to me that they can just coast, and when it gets to that point, no one else can get to the level that they are at, and they know that. So they have to find ways to keep them motivated throughout the regular season if they want to play every single game.
Right. And it's a long year, 82 games. It's crazy, but I've found myself throughout all of this just loving this series. And
Mhm.
every time I'm watching the show and it cuts to black and they roll the credits and I'm like, "Oh my god, it's done already? Like this is the fastest 2 hours. Why is this happening?" And to think that we only have 2 more episodes
Yeah.
left, I'm kind of depressed, honestly, but I've completely just loved this series. And speaking of love, speaking of that, if you love our podcast, please subscribe wherever you get your podcast, Spotify, Apple. You can find us on YouTube, Anchor, Breaker, Radio Public. Please do so. And if you want to support the podcast, all you have to do is go to anchor.fm/behind the glass sports. Again, that's anchor.fm/behind the glass sports. If you go there, you'll see right under our description a little support icon. You can click that and you can choose to donate however much money, any donations will be greatly appreciated. It'll allow us to help deliver a continuously good and even better product and experience for you guys every time you listen. Shout out to, again, everybody that's watched on YouTube, that's listened through Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. We really appreciate it. But again, thanks for tuning in to us. I've loved this series and I don't want it to be over. And it's really made me miss playoff basketball, and just, well, basketball in general, but playoff basketball. And speaking of playoff basketball or regular basketball, even if there is going to be a season, Adrian Wojnarowski, Woj, the Woj bomb himself, put out a few days ago, and I don't know if you guys saw this, you can find it on Twitter, that even if there is a season this year, regular season or postseason, Kevin Durant, he's not going to be playing for the Nets at all this year. We have that audio, right, Brandon?
Yep.
All right, let's throw to that. Here's Woj talking about KD possibly not playing at all.
I wonder if there is thought or calculation of, hey, one of the factors we have to think about when making the decision about finishing out the rest of the 2020 season is just keeping up that fan engagement to the point where you can even have fans in the building yet, because you need fans to still, even once the permission is there, you need them to buy tickets and go sit in the building.
Well, you bring up a number of great points there, Rachel. Number one, look at the TV ratings and why they were down this season. And we can all point to a number of reasons. Was it 15 to 25, the numbers, severely dropped? Well, we know those fans are consuming the NBA, but they're not watching it on television the way the three of us might watch it at night. They're on their phones. I see it in my own house. Like, they're going to watch it on their phone. They're going to watch it streaming. And so the NBA will account for that. And the broadcast networks will account for that in the next TV deal. Wherever the viewers are is what they'll monetize. That's not, to me, a concern. But what was a concern this year, right, was injuries to star players. Now, Steph Curry got injured because he landed on his hand and broke his hand. There's nothing you can do about that. But what about in a shortened preseason? And I know they're thinking about this. If you really want to hurt TV ratings next year, let's rush everybody back this season. Let's get key players injured and now have to hold them off, have their starts pushed back. I mean, guys, Kevin Durant's not coming back to the Nets this year. That's not happening. If they play, they're not playing him.
And that was Woj, I believe, with Rachel Nichols. I don't know if he was on the jump, but he was with Rachel Nichols discussing this topic. Kevin Durant not going to come back. And we kind of touched on this last week in the podcast, talking about, and that was one of my concerns. If you have a shortened season and you come back too soon, if you're a guy like the KDs, the LeBrons, the Steph Currys, or Anthony Davis, I believe, is the one we threw out. Especially if you're coming up on a contract or possibly being able to opt out of your contract, is it really worth it for you to come out into this season and risk playing and injuring yourself severely? And that's what kind of Woj kind of touched on there.
Yeah, I mean, it's very tricky. If you're the team, obviously, you don't want your future to be injured, like Kevin Durant, right? You weren't focused on this year anyways. Why try and rush him back? Or I mean, I guess it's not really rushing him back. It's just, why try and bring him back in this situation? Instead of just waiting, having him go through a full preseason, a full regular season, and just keeping it, staying pretty much just keeping it safe. But for other guys who have been playing throughout the season, and if they're still in shape and they get, say, a month or 2 months to get back into basketball shape before the playoffs were to hit, I think that's a little different as well. I think it's just, it all depends on how everything is brought back. Is there a long process to where they're in the gym and they almost have their own little mini preseason, mini regular season, to where they have time to get back into that basketball shape and then start the playoffs? Because if that's the case, then guys like Anthony Davis and, the guys who have been playing, they should be fine. For someone like Kevin Durant, I don't know if you still want to do that or not, but it's also really not up to the team either. For Kevin Durant, if he feels like he's good to go and he was practicing and playing with his teammates that, the whole, month or two that they are getting ready to, come back to the season, what if he says I'm good? And the trainer's like, yeah, I mean, if he's out there practicing and he's been playing and he says he's good, and so all of a sudden, the training staff clears him, then if he wants to, he can play. It's not up to the team. So I think that's something where, I mean, would I bet on him coming back and playing? No. I would say that he's going to wait till next season, whenever that is, but you never know. If they start coming back and playing and practicing and he's out there and he's practicing and he feels good, I mean, and the Nets are in the playoffs, why not?
Yeah.
Even if it's not 30 minutes a game, if he's coming off the bench giving you 15 minutes a game, I mean, it's up to him at that point.
It's an interesting conversation, and I completely understand it from the aspect of Kevin Durant, especially because, I mean, he's already coming off of a severe injury, so it really doesn't make sense for him. Again, it's just going back to my point. I just don't feel it's worth it to rush these guys back just for the sake of we have to finish the season. I mean, I get it. It's going to look weird if there's a season that's, listed as incomplete, like my math homework usually was in high school. It just doesn't make sense to me, so, but I get it. I want basketball back too. Like, don't get me wrong. I want sports. I want to see these guys play. I just mentioned I miss basketball so much. I miss seeing Nikola Jokic trudge down the floor and throw up some weird looking shot that's nothing but net. I miss that with all of my being. But again, I want the best possible product, and I don't want these guys to get hurt. I don't want to risk, throwing out a shortened or just compromised product just for the sake of having things back. I'd rather just, again, wait it out and figure out how we can make this the best possible season and then go from there. It's going to be an interesting situation to follow how they handle this, because Woj just tweeted out too earlier this morning that the NBA and NBAPA have extended the date, I believe 60 days in terms of when they can terminate this collective bargaining agreement due to the pandemic. So who knows if we're going to have a season or if this is going to affect the CBA and maybe having to get a new one. I don't know. It's a weird situation. 2020 has just been crazy this year.
Yeah, I mean, it's just, I mean, with the NBA, I know they're trying to come up with ways to do this, but I mean, there's a reason why Major League Baseball, which is outside, and that's the least amount of contact in any sport that you have with other players, and they're not even talking about coming back and playing. So, I mean, you can make it so that in baseball, literally, like the most contact you have is when you're on base.
Yes.
That's it.
Or in the dugout.
I mean, yeah, but you can find ways to space out in the dugout, right? You can have certain
put
players
little, like cubicle walls up between everybody.
Well, I mean, you could have guys who aren't gonna play, right? They're not in the dugout.
Yeah.
So at most you probably just have your manager and that's it. So at most you probably have 9 or 10 guys in there and you're spread out. And dugouts are big enough to where you could be pretty spread out in there. So the fact that in baseball you could literally have social distancing within baseball and as you're playing, and the fact that they're not even talking about coming back, it's not going to be anytime soon. And so I get the NBA is trying to finish this season, and I know what they're probably thinking too is their ratings, if they were to come back, are going to be massive.
Oh, for any sport. Can you imagine the first just professional sports game that we have?
Right.
It's going to be completely hyped.
It
could be
I'm sure
the
Horse had
freaking
amazing
Wizards
ratings.
and Hornets. And we'd be like, yeah, let's do this.
Right. So I get it that they really want to come back, but
yeah,
I mean, you got to look at it's especially looking at Major League Baseball and seeing that they're really not even there's really nothing going on with them, and they're still waiting. Right. It's just to me, it's exciting to think that we could have the season back by August, but at the same time, in my mind, nothing's gonna change until at the earliest December, probably January, February, when there is a vaccine. And that's just my thought. The NFL, I don't think we are going to have any sports for the rest of the year. If I had to bet and, give an answer, that's my answer. I don't think we're going to have at least the NFL, the NBA, NHL. I don't think we're going to have those three sports at all in 2020. I could see a scenario where Major League Baseball, because you can figure out ways to social distance in certain ways, you could have to where first, second, third, and the shortstop, they're wearing masks. Anyone out there, you could have helmets. Base runners have helmets that have masks on it. You could figure it out with baseball. With basketball, with the NFL, it's just, there's no way. There's
solution,
just no way.
All right. And I'm surprised nobody's talking about this. Get those big bubble things that people run around and bump into each other with.
Right.
Put them on each player. Here we go. It's the year of the bubble sport in professional sports. Can you imagine that? Guys posting up on each other, banging those bubbles around, or coming down for a fast break trying to dunk on somebody with that bubble, and guys are just top side turned over. Oh yeah. Let's do that. That's the solution.
Did you ever watch that movie Real Steel?
No.
With Hugh Jackman? It's actually a pretty good movie. I like it. But it's robots fighting.
Right. I remember the premise of it. Yeah.
Yeah. When are we gonna see that this year? I'm waiting for that. I'm waiting for that
fighting?
to start. Yeah. I'm waiting for that.
Okay, first off, if we start seeing some robots fighting, we have a bigger issue on hand here, Brand. I think we're overlooking what's actually the issue here. All right, let's not turn this into iRobot. We've already had a pandemic and threats of World War III to start this year. We don't need.
Well, they're controlled by humans
and murder hornets. We don't need these things, Brandon.
Look, the robots are controlled by humans. They don't have their own brain.
Yeah, well, humans have bad intentions. Robots typically have good intentions. So that doesn't make me feel better. If it's not Wall-E robots, I don't want to see it. All right? I don't want to see it. Golly. Speaking of, more salt in the wound, as this year has thrown in ours, Robert Kraft, did you see this? He has auctioned off his Super Bowl 51 ring for charity, which, nice gesture, right? You know what ring that was that he auctioned off?
Super Bowl 51. That's the Atlanta one.
That's the Atlanta Falcons one. If you're an Atlanta Falcon, how disrespected do you feel right now? He could have auctioned off the Rams one, which was an awful Super Bowl that no one cared about. But instead, he was like, I'm going to auction off this Super Bowl ring in which the greatest comeback in Super Bowl history was performed. I don't care about this one. We'll just throw this one away. If you're a Falcons fan, obviously you have to deal with 28-3 every year, when it comes to that time, on this day, don't remember that, in the third quarter, the Falcons were up 28-3. Honestly, we have 43-8 and that's painful,
right? But
I feel for them on that one. Like, you were winning and you lost, and you have to get reminded about that every year. That's just disrespectful by Robert Kraft. Why did he have to choose that ring? Why couldn't it be any other ring?
Maybe that's the one that makes him think about Tom the most.
Oh, yeah.
And now that he doesn't have them, it's pretty depressing, because then he looks at the two guys he has. Yeah. And it's
the 18 other rings he has doesn't make him think about Tom either. It's just that one in particular.
I mean that one specifically, Brady did have an amazing game.
Golly, those poor people in other countries that think the Falcons won, they just don't understand how much misery the Falcons are going through. I just, where do all those T-shirts and merchandise?
They're donated. They're donated to
third world countries, right? So in the backwoods of whatever third world country, some guys are like, man,
their whole history of sports
killed the Seahawks.
I would love to see their history of sports.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah, they're
Like
all
to
mismatched.
them, I'm sure the Buffalo Bills are the greatest NFL franchise in the history of the league.
Right. LeBron is actually 5-3 in some parts of the world. So I mean, Jordan is actually 0-6 in
Well,
certain areas
LeBron would
of
be
the world.
6-3. He's 3-6.
3-6. That's right. Yeah. So
Yeah,
I mean,
Jordan
wow.
sucks in their world.
Yeah, Tom Brady is actually awful in the other world. Like,
Well,
this
but
is a
Brady
dimension
also
I
has
might want to
2,
live in.
right?
Yeah.
Brady would have 2. Or no,
Yeah,
3.
but mostly losses.
He would have 3. That's still pretty good.
Yeah, I think he would be 3-5,
Right.
or 3-6.
That's
3
still
and 5?
pretty good.
I don't know how many.
To have 3 Super Bowls. That's more than Peyton still.
Yes.
That's more than Eli.
Yeah.
That's more than John Elway. He'd still be a top 3 quarterback of all time.
It's crazy. It's crazy
If
stuff,
you flip
man.
his record.
Those people are living in what is that realm in the Avengers? What is that called? The where everybody got shot off to, the quantum realm or something like that. That's where they're living in. It's crazy.
I'm sure. I hope.
Yeah, questionable stuff there. Speaking of questions, though, biggest question, speaking of the NFL as well, I saw this on NFL.com. They put out the biggest question surrounding every NFL team right now. We got to get our Denver Broncos in. What, in your mind, is the biggest question surrounding the Denver Broncos right now? Could be offense, could be defense, could be special teams. That's always been questionable.
I would say Drew Lock. And the only reason why is because he's the most important player. And if he doesn't play well, the team won't do well. And you just put all this talent around him. And I know he went 4-1, but is that something where, teams just didn't have film on him and he was able to take advantage of that? Or was that real? And I think that's, to me, you can say the offensive line, sure, and you can say, but here's the thing. Drew Lock can make the offensive line better. He did last season. Brandon Allen made the offensive line look better after Joe Flacco. So the offensive line, to me, and that question is actually more for Drew Lock. And, the defense is going to be the defense. So to me, it's really all on Drew Lock and how he is able to play. Can he get the ball out quick enough to where he could help his offensive line? Can he move around the pocket well enough to where that could help his offensive line? Will he be able to take advantage of all the weapons that he has to help the offensive line? And to help the rookie receivers that he has and the youth that they have as far as the weapons for him. And it's all on him. That offense is all on him. And if he doesn't play well, they're going to have a bad season. So I think that's, to me, the biggest question is he the guy that we saw in Houston? Or are we going to see more of a guy who we saw against Kansas City?
Yeah, I tend to agree with that. I think you're spot on. I mean, obviously it's Drew Lock, what he's gonna do, but I think the offense as a whole is just one big question mark. I mean, you have question marks at both tackle spots. What's gonna happen with Bowles? I mean, there's said to be competition with him this year with Elijah Wilkinson. Then you go to the right tackle spot. What's going to happen with Juwan James? Is he going to be able to play, more than 2 games this year, full games this year? Then you look at to the specialty players, the skilled players. Yes, you get Melvin Gordon, but you also have Phillip Lindsay, who's rushed for 1,000 yards in his first 2 seasons. You bring in a different back. What's that dynamic going to look like? Who's going to step up for Cortland Sutton? Is Judy going to be the guy? Can we see Fant, even though he had a good year last year, really take that step forward where you're like, wow, this guy could be an elite tight end someday? The whole offensive staff as well is a question mark with Pat Shurmur. I mean, you get a new staff coming in with that. So it's just that whole offense is a huge question mark. And that leads me to my next question. What should be fair expectations of this Broncos offense? Can we expect a top 15 offense? Can we expect a top 12, top 10? Should it be top 5 with all the weapons? What do you think?
I would say you need to be at the top half. So top 15. If you are in the top 15, to me, that's a good year. Considering that you have been dead last, or at least the bottom 5 in the last.
It's been painful, yeah, for the last 3 or 4 years.
Yeah. So, to me, it's been 5. I don't know. how long it's really been. But
It's like that Titanic gif. It's been 84 years. That's what it feels like.
yeah, I mean, it's just if you can be in the top 15, to say that they're going to be in the top 5 and average 30 points per game, that's unrealistic. Could I see it happening? Yeah, I mean, we've seen crazier things happen. I mean, who really thought Patrick Mahomes in his second season, after barely starting any games his rookie year, coming out and throwing 50 touchdowns? You know,
I mean, want to talk about it.
Like that's something that, you know, I mean, crazier things have happened. So could I see the Broncos offense with all of those weapons put up 30 points per game? Yeah. You know, could you see, you know, if someone came up and told me that Drew Lock would throw for 4,000 yards, 30 touchdowns, have, you know, maybe 10 picks, and Melvin Gordon has 1,200 yards, Phillip Lindsay has 800 yards, and they have a combined 15 to 20 touchdowns. And Cortland Sutton has 1,200 yards, Judy has 800 yards, Hamler has, you know, 600-700 yards, Noah Fant has 600-700 yards, and they have, you know, as a team they average 31 points per game.
Okay, if we're doing all that, we better be top 5.
Well, that's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. If someone came up and told you that, are you saying that that's completely crazy?
I would. Yes.
So after watching Patrick Mahomes and someone came up to you and told you that he'd throw for 50 touchdowns.
Yeah, I would have thought it was crazy. Yes.
Right. But now we've seen things like that happen. So is it really that crazy?
I mean, sure, yes, anybody could.
Did you think Lamar
turn the league
Jackson
upside
would
down?
Right. Did you think Lamar Jackson would do what he did in his second year?
No, I'm not saying that it's completely it's not possible. I'm just saying that it's crazy because I think, and you mentioned this a little bit ago, that Drew Lock, I think he's going to have a struggle. There's going to be a period early in the season, and I hope Broncos fans are prepared for it, even though I know that they're not. I hope that they realize that it's not going to be easy for Drew Lock because, yes, he looked good in 5 games, but they also didn't have tape on him. He's going to have younger weapons around him. He's going to, again, have an offensive line that doesn't have that chemistry down. He has a new offensive staff coaching him. He has a condensed offseason to work with, and now it's his first full season as a QB with expectations on top of that. I just hope Broncos fans aren't thinking that it's not going to be what you just said, a 30 touchdown, 4,000 yards, 10 interception season. I think we're more in the realm of a 22 to 25 touchdown, maybe 12 to 18 interceptions, maybe 3,000-ish yard season. That's what I'm thinking here. And not because I don't think Drew Lock has talent. I'm just comparing it to what the situation actually is.
Mm-hmm.
It's a quarterback going into his first full season with only 5 games under his belt, and everything I just mentioned that's changed and is new around him, there's going to be a growing period for him. He's learning an entire new offense. So there's going to be some time for him to gather, which is why I think it's also kind of unfair for people to say that, you know what, if Drew Lock doesn't perform well this year, we need to move on and go to the next guy. How is that fair?
Yeah,
I mean, the guy's
right.
only got 5 games under his belt and he's going into his first full season. So we're going to judge him off of 20 games. I mean, I think he still has room to go. Now, if you gave him full 2 seasons and he doesn't look the part, okay, I'm ready. I'm good. But I think it's a bit premature to want to move off him after 1 full year if he doesn't perform well this year, because there's so much that's changing and new around him.
Right. Would you want to change? Would you want to move on from Baker Mayfield?
If I was in Cleveland, what's he going into year 4 now?
Well, no, he's going into year 3, right?
Is he? I thought he was going into year 4.
Yeah. Yes. Last year was his second year.
When I watch Baker Mayfield, I don't get the sense of a guy who's special. I see a guy that can make plays and could be a good, solid quarterback. I don't think he's necessarily bad, but I also don't think that it's helped that he's had multiple coaching staffs already.
Right. So after 1.5 seasons that he has played, and he had a promising end to his rookie year. Remember, they went and they won a few games.
Yeah.
And it kind of looked like what the Broncos, saw with Drew Lock. So, and then he comes out and they add, Odell Beckham, and They had they have Jarvis Landry, and they have all these weapons, Chubb, and they don't do anything. And he plays terrible. So, is it time to move on from Baker Mayfield then? If
I think
that you have to give him another season, at least one more season.
I think if you're a Browns fan, your patience is probably wearing a little bit thin. Yeah, he's only going into his second season or his third season, so you're right on that. First year, 3,725 yards, 27 touchdowns, 14 picks. His last year, 22 touchdowns, 21 interceptions. He had more yards, about 100 more yards. So he's regressing in certain areas. How much of that is the change in the coaching staff? But he also had more talent around him at the wide receiver position in year 2. So I would say if we see Baker of last year this season, whenever this season is, if we have a season, then okay, I think you're ready to move on. And it's unfair because the guy has had a change in coaching staff. He hasn't had the continuity, that other great quarterbacks were fortunate to have. But we also have to remember too, the NFL is, as Brandon Stokely says, NFL stands for "What have you done for me lately?" league. So, and if you're not doing anything for me now, then it's time to move on. So I get that point too. But for Drew Lock's situation, I think it's premature to move off him after 21 games. Whereas a guy like Baker Mayfield, he started 13 games, or he played 14 games in his first season, 16 games in his second season, and he's going to have another 16 if he stays healthy. Then that's over, 40 games of a sample size. Then, okay, I'm ready. Then at a certain point, after that point, now you kind of have a feel for what a guy actually is. I don't think you can necessarily have that after 20 games with a guy.
Right. And that's why I think Drew Lock gets at least this year and next year, right?
I hope so.
He gets 2 more years, and you get at least, I would say, 2.5 seasons as a quarterback to show something and show it later than, or I guess, more recently than what you showed maybe your rookie year, right? So if Drew Lock comes out and he struggles this year, he has a year that Baker Mayfield has. Okay, what are you thinking at that point? Say he throws 22 touchdowns, 21 picks. With the talent around him.
It also depends, and it's going to sound crazy because 22 touchdowns, 21 picks, you're thinking how can that ever look good? It also depends how it looks. What do those interceptions look like? Which is why I wish they would, when they record interceptions and fumbles, I wish they would put in which one were actually on the QB and which ones were actually
a drop pass
tipped off the receiver's hands. Oh, the defensive lineman tipped it. Because is that really on the QB at that point? No. If he has that 22 touchdown, something like that, like Baker Mayfield did, it just depends on the perspective. If you feel like, he was out there was a couple times where he forced it when he should have. Okay. There was also a handful of times where it bounced off of somebody's hands and it got intercepted. Or there was a few times the defensive lineman caught it and, now it's flailing in the air and the linebacker, gets it. It just depends on the perception. If it's like Baker Mayfield and it's a bad one, then it's okay, now I'm a bit concerned. But if you feel like, these are correctable mistakes and his coaches feel that way, then I'm fine with it. Again, we have to remember, he's going into his first full season as a starter. Okay, so essentially he's just a rookie with some extra padded stats allowed to it. So it's going to be interesting how it plays out. I hope, obviously, that we don't have to go into a situation where we're wondering, is Drew Lock the guy if he throws the 22 touchdowns, 21 outing? Hopefully it's a little bit better than that. But I caution Broncos fans again because they love to wear those orange and blue glasses with their orange and blue yammy yams, and they get in their little snuggie at night, and they think, oh, we're going back to the Super Bowl, baby. Slow down. It's a new season with a new staff and a lot of new young weapons. Just give it time, be patient, and hopefully the management and the coaching staff, head coaching staff with Vic Fangio, take care of things the right way. Hopefully we took care of things for you today, delivered the goods as per usual. We want to thank you for tuning in to the Behind the Glass Sports Podcast with Brandon Stoll and myself. Thanks for everybody that listened on YouTube, that's going to listen wherever you get your podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Anchor, Breaker, Radio Public. We urge you, please, please, please subscribe to us. Also, send us your question. Find us on Twitter at Stephen Priest Jr. for myself, at Brandon_Stoll for Brandon. Send us your questions if you have any questions, or throw them down in the comments. Is there something you want us to talk about for next show, this show? We want your interaction. We would love to have it. And finally, if you want to support the podcast, we're first off gracious you're even listening and tuning into us. But if you want to, throw a little change our way, you can always do that. Go to anchor.fm/behindtheglasssports. Again, anchor.fm/behindtheglasssports. If you go there, there's a support icon. You can hit that. It'll allow you to choose however much you want to put in. It has some preset amounts. If you want to do a little bit less, hey, that's fine too. We understand times are tough. If you want to be gracious and throw us a full C note, we'll take it. Brandon and I will split it, and we'll buy some crumble cookies and celebrate with that. Love it. No, we'll use that to make this podcast as great as possible and continue to strive to get better. Again, thanks for tuning in. We hope your week starts off great and goes great. We'll see you Friday. Thanks for tuning in. This has been the Behind the Glass Sports Podcast.